Well, good evening and welcome. It looks like and that's not going to work. So let's try that again. Nah, there, that worked. Um, it looks like we've gotten in the bad habit of starting late, and this week it was a very simple case of napping in. I sat down about 6 o'clock, thought I'd sit for a moment and relax before we started. And next thing you know, I'm waking up and it's 6:30. So I had to get things set up and then get started. So that took me a moment. And my wife just called in. She probably figured I was trying to call her and called me. So she's here and available. Have you got it put away where I can put it up there in front of the mic? Okay.
I'm probably going to real quick.
Just a moment. What's that?
I said I'm probably going to fall asleep on you real quick.
Oh, okay. That's like the real quick threw me. Sorry.
Huh?
I said the term "real quick" is what threw me. So
Well, would you go for authentic speediness?
well, the way you said "real quick" made me think you needed me in there for a moment. That's why I got up.
I'm good.
Okay. Well, this is our Friday night Bible study for Friday, May 8th, 2026.
Today we fry.
What was that?
Today we fry.
Oh, all right, if you say so. Um, and things are going on in this house as usual. I have another computer on, the old computer that we used to use for the stream, on over there, and I'm trying to wait for it to get done running the hard drive at 100%. I've had it on since, a little afternoon today, and it's still over there working at it, and I can tell from here that it's still running that hard drive at 100%. So I'm going to let it sit and see if it gets caught up at some point. We've got the updates done on it, which is why, I decided today to fire up all the computers that don't normally run and get them updated so everything's like it should be. So we did have some cool weather arrive this week. It rained. Well, actually, I think it rained most of the day Wednesday, and then it cleared up on Thursday, but it also got chilly, and we even had to switch back from air conditioning to heat because it got that chilly. So it's been that kind of a week. The big aviation news this week, you've probably heard, was the what has now been categorized as an accident on approach to runway 29 at Newark Liberty International Airport. A United flight from Venice, Italy, was making that approach. Given the limitations of the airport, number one, that's Newark's shortest runway. Number two, it doesn't have a precision approach, so they were doing what's called an RNAV approach. The end of runway 29, the approach end of runway 29, takes you right over Interstate 95, which is known in that area as the New Jersey Turnpike. You may have seen the dash cam video. It was traditional fleet dash cam, which shows you a view of the road in front of the truck, and then also has a slightly angled uh, view in the opposite direction that looks right at the driver. And it's the driver video that everybody's been looking at because the driver's going down the interstate and paying attention and singing to himself, and he hears this sound, and you see him looking right. And people who have been able to look at that video frame by frame have stopped the video at the frame just before all who knows what breaks loose, where you can't see anything anymore but just clutter and debris. And in that, you can see the left landing gear of that United flight just before it hits the truck, sets off the airbags in the cab, knocks the truck over. The aircraft also knocks over a lamp post, a street lamp post, right in that area, and the news accounts indicate that a Jeep hit that fallen lamp post. The only injuries in the entire incident involved the truck driver, who was taken to the hospital for cuts on his arm from the glass of the shattered side window. He was taken to the hospital, treated, and released. So nobody on the airplane was injured, and in fact, the flight crew seemed to be totally unaware that anything had happened. A little while later, they mentioned some kind of a bump at the threshold, and a crew went out and checked the runway. They didn't find anything on the runway, foreign object debris, FOD, or FOD on the runway. They didn't find any of that. But a crew did look at the side of the airplane, and I have seen what purports to be a picture of that, probably caused by the lamppost that it hit. And I had heard something about a hole in the aircraft, but it was not a big gaping hole. It's more like maybe you've seen some of these tractor trailer rigs where the driver cut a corner a little too tight and caught the side of the trailer on the edge of a roof or something, and puts a bit of a crease, and it actually tears into the skin enough to break it. It was one of those kind of things. So the plane will probably have to be repaired. This was a 767-400. So they're about, some of them are nearing 25 years of age. I think this one was about that age. So anyway, the flight crew has been placed on leave. That's just standard in these cases. What's clear is that the aircraft was too low on that approach. It shouldn't be hitting highway traffic, even a tall 18-wheeler. The design of the approach is such that they're well away from that. They come by close, and there are a number of videos out there you can see of dash cams of people who have watched a flight, even a United flight, come by really close on that approach. There are some airline captains that have commented on it and who have said that they would not attempt to land on that shorter runway with that big of an aircraft. You can do it, but even though the winds suggested that, it is possible for a flight crew to come back unable and request one of the longer runways. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion about that, and the NTSB will look into it, and we'll find out whether the flight crew was low trying to get the plane down as soon as possible in order to have more runway for braking, or given the gusty winds, if perhaps they ran into what's known as wind shear, and it's kind of the bottom suddenly dropped out from under the airplane, and they got a sudden, unexpected, unplanned a drop in altitude that got them down low enough to actually strike that vehicle. So I did do a little looking up of things. I calculated that the truck, being a bakery truck, Probably, and a day cab. It didn't have the weight of a sleeper on the back of the tractor. Uh, Probably weighed in the neighborhood of 50 to 60,000 pounds. So I looked up the average landing weight of a 767 400. That comes out to about 350,000 pounds or more. Now, given the long transatlantic flight, they probably didn't have a whole lot of fuel, so that helped reduce the weight. But still, if you take that 350,000 and you compare that to 50 or 60,000 of a truck, and the plane's going over 100 miles an hour, and the truck's doing 55, and they confirmed that's the speed that it was going. Apparently, that data is on that dash cam video, and coming in at essentially right angles. The impact, the collision, was catastrophic for the truck. Given the bumpy ride in that gusty wind, the aircrew very well may not have felt that and have it register as anything but we're about to land and it's a bit bumpy. So, well, enough yammering about that. Since we're in the Proverbs and I'm wanting to get past the Proverbs, we'll do Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon. Those are a bit shorter, and then we'll get into the prophets, specifically Isaiah, which I think we'll enjoy going through a whole lot. So I'm kind of pushing to get there. So I want to put as much time as I can into the actual reading. So, without further ado, let's bow our heads and we'll begin. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for your blessings. We thank you for the written word. We thank you also for the living word. The word made flesh, who came and dwelt among us, so that we might catch a glimpse of your character as lived in human form, in a way we could grasp and understand it. We open the written word now, but we want that to lead us to the living word, and we want it to give us a clear glimpse of your character, that we might trust you and have a better and more meaningful relationship with you. Send your Holy Spirit toward that end, not just to us, but to each person listening. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. So, let's click on this little button and get up the ability for you to read what we read. And we are ready to start at Proverbs chapter 22. And this one is labeled in this version, Sayings of the Wise. Now, there is a place where in other versions it makes a distinction, but that's actually farther on into chapter 22. So we'll probably come across that in this version where it'll put that in as a subtitle. Verse 1, choose a good reputation over great riches. Being held in high esteem is better than silver or gold. Well, how do you get a good reputation? And there are people who will try to do that by tooting their own horn, telling everybody what great people they are and making a big show of it.
It's called integrity.
Ah, well. Yeah, a good reputation that actually sticks and that people will stand behind is based on a consistent character that is unselfish, others focused, and, like my wife said, fixed in integrity, or, in other words, attached to reality. That is what gives a person a good reputation. That's what's more valuable than great riches, than silver or gold. Verse 2, the rich and poor have this in common. The Lord made them both. Now that's a very clear reference to me to the fundamental equality of all humans before our Creator. He made us all. He made us with the same intent. Now, He didn't make us all the same. He created a system when He created life on this planet such that each individual would be unique and different. But different doesn't change our fundamental equality in His eyes. So whether you're rich or whether you're poor, the Lord made you. You're human. The old saying was, He puts His pants on one leg at a time just like me. Well, that one lasted until people got off into space, and in the weightlessness of space, the astronauts would put their pants on both legs all at once. And one of them even joked, well, now I'm better than the president. I put my pants on two legs at a time. But the point of the saying being, we're all human, and before our Creator, we're all equal. No one can be more important than another one. Verse 3, a prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. And that's something that in our workaday world, the stage of employment and pay and everything that the system we have established in our world to cover over the fact that we're actually wicked human beings. In that world, it's important for an employer to be conscious of safety. And that includes, if an employer is appropriate about safety, then certain tasks will have a pre-task conference in which they examine the task, look at the potential hazards, and then address those hazards by establishing precautions to prevent those hazards from becoming actual injuries. So the prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. And that may have come from a case brought before Solomon in which somebody was trying to blame somebody else for their injury. And Solomon concluded that if they had been prudent, they would have seen that what happened might happen, and they would have taken precautions to prevent it. So it wasn't the fault of the person they were trying to point the finger at. It was their own fault. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences.
Well, what is that saying? Something about insanity is doing something over and over, even though you get it wrong, and you're expecting it to work, even it doesn't.
Yeah, I think the saying is roughly, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Verse 4, true humility and fear of the Lord lead to riches, honor, and long life. Well, in today's world, maybe the riches aren't there and the honor may be a little bit lacking, but usually you can count on a long life. Verse 5, corrupt people walk a thorny, treacherous road. Whoever values life will avoid it. Now I wonder what he meant there by corrupt. Let's see what some of the other versions use there at verse 5. Well, in the paths of the wicked lie thorns and snares, is what the NIV says. And the King James says, thorns and snares are in the way of the froward. Be that doth keep his soul shall be far from them. Oh, he that doth keep his soul shall be far from them. All right. Saw the H and thought it was a B. That threw me off. Verse 6. Direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. Now, this is the one that's familiar to many, many people, because in the King James it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now, some people like to read that as a promise and say, well, if you were a good parent, your kids would go right. That doesn't follow, because there's only one perfect parent, and that is God himself, and one of his children became the author of evil. So you can't say that just because you're a good parent, that's a guarantee you're going to have good kids. Now, I did once run across an interpretation, I don't know if I read it or heard it, but somebody said that it's possible that, properly understood, this says that if you train your child in such a way that leads him into a wrong path, then when they are older, they will not leave it. And I think the suggestion was that, let's see, the King James says, in the way he should go, and they suggested that rather than should go, which is also the language of the NIV, that perhaps the Hebrew meant the way the child wants to go. If you give a child too much headroom and let them go where they shouldn't go, then when they get older, they'll have become hardened in that thinking, and you won't be able to turn them from it. Verse 7. Just as the rich rule the poor.
Hey,
What?
are we advocating mind control?
I am not advocating mind control. I am advocating wise direction.
Huh?
Wise direction.
Direction.
Direction. You need to guide them. It says direct them in this version. You don't control them. That will create a problem for sure. But perhaps the best part of training is training by example. And there's the saying out there, do as I say, not as I do. Well, that doesn't work very well.
Out of them. Don't beat the peanut butter out of them.
Well, no, don't do that. But if you want them to grow up to be a certain kind of a person, you have to be that person consistently in their presence while they are young. That example, that instruction by example, is far more effective than anything else you can do.
Well, one thing you can do for them is encourage them to try. Don't tell them that they're a failure. Don't program them to be a failure.
Yeah, that's what's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. You'll never turn out to be any good. And so the kid believes it and grows up and turns out not to be any good. No, you don't want to do that. Just as the rich rule the poor, so the borrower is servant to the lender.
I have a solution for the raising the kid problem.
What?
Birth control.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you see these child support cases where dad's crying and carrying on. You're taking all my money. I have a 1 year old. I'm supposed to raise it. You have an ex-wife with kids that you owe support to. You aren't making enough money to support those kids, and you've got a 1 year old. Dude, you have a bigger problem than the court telling you what money you have to pay to support your existing children. Sorry, I got off on my soapbox on that one.
Yeah, you kind of had to step in and help support a kid because somebody wasn't doing real good at. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. I apologize because that wasn't entirely accurate.
All right, well.
Got better when we got married.
Those who plant injustice will harvest disaster, and their reign of terror will come to an end. Now, there's a footnote on that. The Greek version includes an additional proverb: God blesses a man who gives cheerfully, but his worthless deeds will come to an end. And they say to compare 2 Corinthians 9:7. And we've mentioned this before, that very often when the New Testament writers quoted the Old Testament, rather than do the translating themselves, they would use the existing Greek version known as the Septuagint, which was produced by the Jews who lived in Alexandria, Egypt, during the time of the Greeks, who were big on learning and who created a big library in Alexandria and asked the Jews to produce a Greek translation of their scriptures so that that would be available to their Greek scholars. And so sometimes that translation leaves us wondering how faithful it might have been to the original Hebrew. Let's just see. What verses did we just read? I think that was verse 8. Yes. In the King James Version, he that soweth iniquity shall reap vanity, and the rod of his anger shall fail. And in the NIV, can I find that verse? He who sows wickedness reaps trouble, and the rod of his fury will be destroyed. And I don't see any indication in there about the Greek having another proverb attached to it. Blessed are those who are generous, because they feed the poor. Throw out the mocker, and fighting goes too. Quarrels and insults will disappear. In other words, sometimes it is important to separate ourselves from toxic people. And I think that's what this verse 10 advocates. Whoever loves a pure heart and gracious speech will have the king as a friend. And there may have been an accusation of bias on the part of the king when the king made a particular decision. And so Solomon writes, well, yeah, if you're a particular kind of person, the king will probably be your friend. And if you are a particular different kind of person who does not have gracious speech, but goes writing on and on about how they're right and important and good and all that, you may not find the favor with the king that the other person did. The Lord preserves those with knowledge, but he ruins the plans of the treacherous. Standard Old Covenant understanding there. The lazy person claims there's a lion out there. If I go outside, I might be killed. Now, that is kind of a balance to the verse we read earlier, because very early on in verse 3, he talked about a prudent person foreseeing danger and taking precautions. But you can take that too far. And the lazy person will come up with virtually any excuse they can in order to avoid being active. So they'll say things like, I think I saw a lion out there. He might kill me if I go outside. Next one I think we need to take as it is written gender specific, but I think we can read it and understand it in a gender neutral way. The mouth of an immoral woman is a dangerous trap. Those who make the Lord angry will fall into it. A youngster's heart is filled with foolishness, but physical discipline will drive it far away. Now let's read that in the other versions here. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. How did the NIV do that? Folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline will drive it far from him. They didn't change the wording much at all there. And, we've talked about that in the past. I think Solomon did believe, given his use of actual capital punishment, that corporal punishment would be valuable for children. That doesn't mean that's a good idea. That just means that was Solomon's understanding, and he committed that understanding to writing.
In his day, that's probably what they did, beat the peanut butter out of kids.
Yeah. A person who gets ahead by oppressing the poor or by showering gifts on the rich will end in poverty. In other words, there's a problem in the world, the uneven distribution of wealth. If you go about making that problem worse, it might not go very well for you. Now, here is the section that's titled Sayings of the Wise. So these are not necessarily attributable to Solomon. It may have come from some of Solomon's successors and was added into his book as they continued Solomon's practice of writing out the reasoning behind their decisions. So, verse 17 kind of introduces it by saying, "Listen to the words of the wise, apply your heart to my instruction. For it is good to keep these sayings in your heart, and always ready on your lips. I am teaching you today, yes, you, so you will trust in the Lord. I have written 30 sayings for you, filled with advice and knowledge. In this way you may know the truth and take an accurate report to those who sent you." Well, that's interesting.
Break here.
What?
I'm gonna take a break here.
Okay. Night night.
I'm gonna move this on.
This take an accurate report to those who sent you recalls to mind the story of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. who came to hear his wisdom. Although in that case, it wasn't, she didn't send somebody, she made a journey and went to hear Solomon for herself. So this is probably another king, probably of Judah, who received a visitor from abroad who was tasked with seeking wisdom from the Jewish kings. And so this is the introduction to that section. And the author says, listen to these instructions, keep them in your heart. I'm teaching you today so that you will trust in the Creator. And now I have written 30 sayings for you, filled with advice and knowledge. In this way you may know the truth and take an accurate report to those who sent you. And I have in the past counted, and I think the 30 is relatively accurate.
There's something a bit ago talking about the Queen of Sheba.
Yes.
When Ethan was an adolescent, we were driving from Fort Worth to Dallas, and we saw a billboard put up by a grocery store, and they were showing something that was on sale, and there was this cartoon grocer looking at the item, and he had a big smile on his face, and he was licking his lips because what was on sale tasted so good. It was Sheba cat food. You mentioned the Queen of Sheba. I'm going to remember that billboard.
Yeah.
I don't eat cat food, but that guy does.
Well, I made it look that way anyway. Now, the footnote for verse 20 there says potentially that it means excellent sayings. The meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain. And okay. Okay, and the NIV does make a note about that uncertainty for verse 20. It says, or not formerly written, or not written excellent, because the wording in the NIV is, have I not written 30 sayings for you? So, verse 22, don't rob the poor just because you can, or exploit the needy in court. For the Lord is their defender. He will ruin anyone who ruins them. Standard Old Covenant understanding. Don't befriend angry people or associate with hot-tempered people, or you will learn to be like them and injure yourself. Another reason to keep toxic people out of our lives. Don't agree to guarantee another person's debt or put up security for someone else. If you can't pay it, even your bed will be snatched from under you. In other words, creditors are going to look to get their money back, whoever they can legally go after, and they will put somebody in the poorhouse in order to get it. They don't care. Don't cheat your neighbor by moving the ancient boundary markers set up by previous generations. In our culture, we use surveyors, and surveyors find markers that indicate the original survey of the land, and they use that to determine if there's a dispute about who owns what. That's what they do. And so there are boundary markers of a sort. Now, in our day, they're rarely uh, physical objects, although there are such physical objects as well, um, markers that indicate particular um, geographic locations by the latitude and longitude. But generally, legal descriptions are given in such a way that they're relative to a particular standard point, and those points are controlled by the authorities in a particular governmental entity, so that private individuals can get into trouble if they mess with them. And that's just the meaning here. Don't cheat your neighbor by moving the ancient boundary markers set up by previous generations. Leave it alone. Do you see any truly competent workers? They will serve kings rather than working for ordinary people. Well, of course, the king has first pick of the labor pool, so of course he's going to pick what he believes will be the best workers. But being a diligent worker in any situation is always advantageous and serves the worker, puts the worker in good stead. Proverbs 23, continuing on. While dining with a ruler, pay attention to what is put before you. If you are a big eater, put a knife to your throat. Well, I'm sure he didn't mean that literally, but don't desire all the delicacies, for he might be trying to trick you. Imagine a case associated with that saying. Don't wear yourself out trying to get rich. Be wise enough to know when to quit. So, at the end of chapter 22, he talked about being a diligent worker, but now we get a balancing note. In the blink of an eye, wealth disappears, for it will sprout wings and fly away like an eagle. In other words, use wisdom and discernment and intelligence and know when you need to apply yourself to improve your situation, but also knowing when not to keep pushing just to get more, because that may not be that helpful. And why wear yourself out and your health trying to get wealth that might disappear unexpectedly? Don't eat with people who are stingy. Don't desire their delicacies. They are always thinking about how much it costs. Footnote A, the meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain, but given the context, that sounds reasonable. Eat and drink, they say, but they don't mean it. You will throw up what little you've eaten, and your compliments will be wasted. Just for the fun of it, let's read that in the King James. And that's starting at verse 6. Eat thou not the bread of him that hath an evil eye, neither desire thou his dainty meats. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he to thee, but his heart is not with thee. The morsel which thou hast eaten shalt thou vomit up, and lose thy sweet words. And I think I have to turn the page to read that in the NIV, where it says, "Do not eat the food of a stingy man. Do not crave his delicacies. For he is the kind of man who is always thinking about the cost. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you." And so on. "Do not waste your breath on fools, for they will despise the wisest advice." Jesus put it this way: "Do not cast your pearls before swine." All right. "Don't cheat your neighbor by moving the ancient boundary markers. Don't take the land of defenseless orphans. For their Redeemer is strong. He himself will bring their charges against you." Now there's a footnote on that. Redeemer might be lowercase r. They've made it uppercase r here to suggest Jesus Christ. Okay, the NIV renders it defender and makes it capitalized. And they don't footnote it. "Commit yourself to instruction. Listen carefully to the words of knowledge. Don't fail to discipline your children. The rod of punishment won't kill them. Physical discipline may well save them from death." So that idea got carried down, apparently, to other generations. And footnote for that, verse 14, the Hebrew says from Sheol, or the place of the dead. Verse 15, "My child," footnote will say that the Hebrew reads "my son," "if your heart is wise, my own heart will rejoice. Everything in me will celebrate when you speak what is right." And imagine this from the concept of the king, or from the viewpoint of the king, who is raising the next ruler of the nation. And he wants his son to follow him and to use the same integrity and justice and wisdom in deciding cases that he did. So he says, "My son, if your heart is wise, my own heart will rejoice. Everything in me will celebrate when you speak what is right." "Don't envy sinners, but always continue to fear the Lord. You will be rewarded for this. Your hope will not be disappointed." And even when it's positive like that, we might suggest standard Old Covenant understanding. "My child, listen and be wise. Keep your heart on the right course. Do not carouse with drunkards or feast with gluttons, for they are on their way to poverty, and too much sleep clothes them in rags." Verse 22, "Listen to your father who gave you life, and don't despise your mother when she is old. Get the truth and never sell it. Also get wisdom, discipline, and good judgment. The father of godly children has cause for joy. What a pleasure to have children who are wise." Footnote E, and we passed a couple. Yeah, we mentioned my son. Hebrew says to have a wise son. Okay, yeah. So this version has tried to make it more gender neutral. "So give your father and mother joy. May she who gave you birth be happy. O my son, give me your heart. May your eyes take delight in following my ways. A prostitute is a dangerous trap. A promiscuous woman is as dangerous as falling into a narrow well. She hides and waits like a robber, eager to make more men unfaithful. And that reflects what we read in some of the earlier chapters before chapter 10 in this book of Proverbs. Here's another verse, a section. The verses 29 through 35 are all one passage on one subject, and it's a favorite of the teetotaler crowd. Let's read through it. And this is something that I think I mentioned last week. It's very vivid in its language, and it has some very accurate portrayals in it of the condition of people who fall victim to the topic of this section. Who has anguish? Who has sorrow? Who is always fighting? Who's always complaining? Who has unnecessary bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? It is the one who spends long hours in the taverns trying out new drinks. Don't gaze at the wine, seeing how red it is, how it sparkles in the cup, how smoothly it goes down. For in the end, it bites like a poisonous snake. It stings like a viper. You will see hallucinations, and you will say crazy things. You will stagger like a sailor tossed at sea, clinging to a swaying mast. And you will say, they hit me, but I don't feel it. I didn't even know it when they beat me up. When will I wake up so I can look for another drink? And just because it's familiar to me, let me read that out of the NIV. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaints? Who has needless bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? Those who linger over wine, who go to sample bowls of mixed wine. Do not gaze at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. In the end, it bites like a snake and poisons like a viper. Your eyes will see strange sights, and your mind imagine confusing things. You will be like one sleeping on the high seas, lying on top of the rigging. They hit me, you will say, but I'm not hurt. They beat me, but I don't feel it. When will I wake up so I can find another drink? And that is a description not of alcohol per se, but of the person who has fallen victim to alcohol and cannot control their consumption. I saw a video this week from the Keys, somewhere in the Keys on a beach, and a woman got in trouble because her 3-year-old daughter got out in the water and was drowning, and some stranger went out and saved the girl and got her brought back up on shore. And so they went looking for the mother, and mother really never expresses concern over the daughter. She's terribly concerned about her own reputation. I'm a good mom. I was only gone for a second. I thought the guys were watching her. That kind of thing. But at one point in the video, this is unrelated to the main subject, one of her friends that had gone to the beach with her, she was there to celebrate her birthday apparently, had gotten so drunk that they had to haul her away in an ambulance. And you actually got some of the body cam video of her on the stretcher just before they got it up into the ambulance. And she was so drunk that she couldn't even sit up in the stretcher. She was hanging over the side of it, all about to fall out. If they hadn't tied her in, she probably would have. That is someone who has lost control. She's no longer in control. The alcohol is in control. And in that situation, you can drink so much that you hallucinate and you say crazy things and you stagger because you've so muddled your mind. Alcohol is a depressant, so it shuts the brain down. You can shut so much your brain down that your motor functions are impaired and you have a hard time walking straight. And another effect of it is that you tend not to be aware of injury. And so a drunk driver creates great pain and agony and injures himself, but somehow he doesn't feel it because his brain is so shut down from the drug of the alcohol that has affected his system. And then the closing line, I think, is so descriptive of someone who has lost control because they get totally messed up, unable to control themselves. They try to sleep it off, but then as soon as they wake up, what do they want? They're trying to cover up some kind of a problem. There's a pain that they're trying to self-medicate, usually an emotional pain, that they're trying to self-medicate with the alcohol. And being drunk, as unpleasant as that is better than being awake and feeling the emotional pain of your life situation. So when can I wake up so I can look for another drink? Continuing in this section, we haven't gotten through all 30 of the sayings yet. Don't envy evil people or desire their company, for their hearts plot violence, and their words always stir up trouble. A house is built by wisdom and becomes strong through good sense. Through knowledge, its rooms are filled with all sorts of precious riches and valuables. There may be a bit of Old Covenant understanding there. The wise are mightier than the strong, and those with knowledge grow stronger and stronger. So don't go to war without wise guidance. Victory depends on having many advisors, and that's very similar to something that we read a week or so back. And there's a footnote there after strong. Let's see what that says. Footnote A, as in the Greek version, the Hebrew reads, a wise man is strength. Wisdom is too lofty for fools. Among leaders at the city gate, they have nothing to say. And I think we've picked up on it in some of the historical passages. The city gate was kind of the location for people to come and to approach the elders and the city rulers with their disputes and their problems and so on. And so you would expect the wise men of the city to be there at the gate, which was sort of like the courtroom for the city. But if you're a fool, you haven't got any wisdom to offer in that setting. Excuse me. A person who plans evil will get a reputation as a troublemaker. The schemes of a fool are sinful. Everyone detests a mocker. Verse 10. If you fail under pressure, your strength is too small. How do you get to where you don't fail under pressure? Well, it's kind of like, how does somebody get to where they can bench press 300, 400 pounds, however much is the limit these days? You don't do it by grabbing that 300-pound barbell and trying to lift it. You get there by starting small and doing those smaller lifts until those are easy, and then you add weight and you continue, and over time, as you continue that, you develop the strength to bench press those very heavy weights. It's the same with standing true under pressure. The little things of life, the everyday trials and problems, that's where we have the opportunity, and we shouldn't say, oh, that's a small deal, it doesn't matter. No, that's your opportunity to build your moral strength. And if you do that faithfully through little things at a time, then as the bigger things come, you'll have the strength to deal with them. And if you keep on being faithful in those situations, then when the really big test comes, you're able to endure it because you have built up that moral strength. Rescue those who are unjustly sentenced to die. Save them as they stagger to their death. Don't excuse yourself by saying, look, we didn't know. For God understands all hearts, and He sees you. He who guards your soul knows you knew. He will repay all people as their actions deserve. Well, His wrath is to allow natural consequences to take place, and natural consequences, we sometimes use an Eastern term, karma, for it, eventually pay you back. Here's an interesting passage, and I have read this contrasted some passages a little later on. We'll probably get a chance to do that. But the point here is not the metaphor that it's found in verse 13. It's the lesson that it teaches. My child, or my son, eat honey, for it is good, and the honeycomb is sweet to the taste. In the same way, wisdom is sweet to your soul. If you find it, you will have a bright future, and your hopes will not be cut short. So, the point of verse 13 is not to tell you to eat honey, although there is advantage to that in certain situations, such as the story of Jonathan, who ate the honey and made his dad mad at him because his dad was already off his rocker, so, Don't wait in ambush at the home of the godly, and don't raid the house where the godly live. The godly may trip 7 times, but they will get up again. But one disaster is enough to overthrow the wicked. And in a similar vein, don't rejoice when your enemies fall. Don't be happy when they stumble. For the Lord will be displeased with you and will turn his anger away from them. Well, I would question if that's really the case. First of all, he's not angry with them, he's angry with the things that are causing them to do that. He's angry at their sins, not at them. But then to bring the point of this proverb to bear, the Lord will be displeased with your glee at your enemy's trouble, because then that is sin on your part. And he will be saddened by your malfeasance. Don't fret because of evildoers. Don't envy the wicked, for evil people have no future. The light of the wicked will be snuffed out. Now, I'm remembering a song that includes those words, and I'm wondering if this is it. Let me look that up. Where are we? Verse 19. Fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious at the wicked. I'll have to go look up the words later, but I think that's in a song that I have in one of my books over there. My child, fear the Lord and the king. Don't associate with rebels, for disaster will hit them suddenly. Who knows what punishment will come from the Lord and the king? Well, yeah, they got to a point where they were beginning to believe this divine right of kings nonsense. And so, yeah, if the king does it, it comes from both the Lord and the king. Well, God's not out to punish. He allows punishment to take place sometimes when he lets natural consequences have sway, but he's not doing it because he thinks punishment will correct us. He's doing it because he's given up on trying to correct us. And there may be situations, I would guess they're very few and far between, where those disasters do bring somebody to their senses. But that's not a tool God uses. That's just the happenstance of the human condition. Now, I didn't count, but I suppose if you did count, you would get to number 30 there at verse 21. So now it says, more sayings of the wise, and it introduces it in verse 23 by, here are some further sayings of the wise. It is wrong to show favoritism when passing judgment. A judge who says to the wicked, you are innocent, will be cursed by many people and denounced by the nations. But it will go well for those who convict the guilty. Rich blessings will be showered on them. An honest answer is like a kiss of friendship, as long as it isn't supposed honesty used to cover up evil intent. Because there are people who will put somebody down and insult them and say, well, I'm just telling the truth. Your opinion isn't truth, except for you. And to tell it to other people like it is truth and do it in order to make them feel bad, no, that's not an honest answer. And it is not a kiss of friendship. Do your planning and prepare your fields before building your house. Well, I don't have a whole lot to say about that, I guess. Don't testify against your neighbors without cause. Don't lie about them. In a court of justice, lies are a big deal. And don't say, now I can pay them back for what they've done to me. I'll get even with them. No. The truth should be in place regardless of how you feel about a particular person. I walked by the field of a lazy person, the vineyard of one with no common sense. I saw that it was overgrown with nettles. It was covered with weeds, and its walls were broken down. Then, as I looked and thought about it, I learned this lesson. A little extra sleep, a little more slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. Then poverty will pounce on you like a bandit. Scarcity will attack you like an armed robber. Now we get to chapter 25, which I'm looking at the clock and saying we don't have time to get into this, but we will note these are more Proverbs of Solomon collected by the advisors of King Hezekiah of Judah. Now we'll go back and review our history. Hezekiah was the king who was relatively inconsequential given the territory that he controlled. He was the king of Judah when Israel went away into captivity to Assyria. And when that happened, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, got an inflated ego and thought, well, I could do that to Israel, I can do it to Judah too. And we've read those stories and looked at what happened to him as a result. And his own annals are rather quiet about what happened there. That was the King Hezekiah. He was the one who, after that, got word that he was about to die, and he prayed earnestly about it, and he got the sign of the shadow on the steps, and the prophet Isaiah was sent to give him a new message, and Isaiah had them apply a poultice of figs on the boil, and he recovered. And he went on to be king for about 15 more years, some of which apparently he shared with his son Manasseh. Unfortunately, his son Manasseh did not live by the wisdom that King Hezekiah had his advisors collect from Solomon, and he became the most wicked, by most accounts, king of Judah. At least in the prophet's eyes he was. So that is the King Hezekiah spoken of here. And so we will, now let's see, 25, there are 31 chapters in Proverbs. So there will be more sayings of Solomon in chapters 25 and 26. And let's see, 27 and even 28. Then, well, even 29. So 25 through 29. Then chapter 30 goes into the words of Agur. We'll talk about that when we get there. And then chapter 31 is the words of King Lemuel, and that will be the final chapter. Don't know that we'll get there in one more night, but we will mark chapter 25 and we will plan to start there next week when we return to our Friday night Bible study. So we invite you to join us then. We're glad you can be with us now, and until that next study, we say goodbye and God bless.